Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for coming to our blogging edition of the Poetica Marketing Summer Webinar Series. This is our third installment out of four, and I'm excited to have you guys here. Blogging is one of my favorite topics to discuss in content marketing, so this will be a fun one. All of them I think have been fun, but this one is especially exciting for me. A little bit about us. So I am the founder of Poetica Marketing. We're a content marketing agency and events coordination company, which means we help companies stand out online and in person. I am the guy that makes stuff. I'm a copywriter by trade. I'm a strategist within Poetica. Um, and I am lucky enough and fortunate enough to work with my wife and best friend, Regina, who is our event coordinator at Poetica. We started off this series at the beginning of the month talking about content marketing and content strategy with Jules at the Business of Marketing. And last week we talked about SEO, search engine optimization, with Misha over at Red Tree Web Design. So if you want to watch either of those, you can check those out on our YouTube channel. Today, obviously, we're talking about blogging, and next week, we're talking about email marketing and email marketing strategies with Dan Simpkins of DX Performance. So if you would like to register for that and you haven't yet, you can do that through Eventbrite. You can also shoot me an email, and I will get you promo codes to that, and you can come join us for that as well. So for today, we will start off talking about what a blog actually is and why they matter. We'll talk about what's possible with blogging. We'll look at some case studies there. We'll look at places and ideas where you can come up with more blog ideas. We'll do a really quick crash course in copywriting. So if you're not comfortable as a writer, we'll look at some really quick tricks that you can apply to become a stronger writer. We'll look at the anatomy of a blog. How do we go about building and writing one? We'll talk about how do we promote a blog. We'll look at some of the technologies that you can use. We'll talk a little bit about generative AI. So if you want to use things like ChatGPT in your blog writing process, we'll talk about some of the pros and cons there. And then to close things off, we'll talk about how to measure blog success. And as with the previous installments of this webinar series, if you have any questions, please feel free to unmute, ask away. You can also drop a question in the chat or raise your hand, and we can have more of a conversation instead of more of like a lecture series. I do want this to be as interactive as you would like it to be, so if you have any questions or notes or observations you want to make, feel free to speak up, especially because this is a smaller group than some of the other sessions. So let's start high level. What is a blog? Why do they matter? And why do companies bother investing in blogging? There are a number of benefits to blogging. One of them is just building trust with readers and a target audience. Every single one of us has an ideal target audience for our business. There are people that we want to be in front of, and we want to build trust with them, and we want to turn them into paying customers. Blogging is another way of expressing the value and knowledge that we have to convince them to do business with us. As part of that, this is another way of establishing yourself and your company as an industry thought leader to help you stand out amongst the competition. Everybody has competition. We're all doing our best to stand out. More importantly, though, there is a serious business case for using blogs in our marketing strategy and building our businesses. So we looked at this a little bit last week when we talked about SEO, but blogging is one of the most important tools in SEO in driving more traffic to our website. WordStream, which is a phenomenal source for content marketing, resource guidance, blogs, research, businesses that get businesses that blog get 55% more website traffic than businesses that don't. So if you think about your website as sort of your digital marketplace, think about having a brick and mortar store somewhere in Pittsburgh. A lot of your Business is going to be conducted when people walk by, come into your shop, and take a look at your shelves. Your website's a little bit like that, but it's in the digital landscape. So blogging is a way that it will help you get more traffic. I think this 55% is a little modest. Some of our clients see 600, 1,000% more traffic after they start blogging consistently. And this is even for established businesses that have had their services pages up for a long time, and now they're just creating new traffic sources. Another big benefit is increased sales. So with that traffic comes more opportunities for sales. So WordStream also says that marketers with blogs are 13 times more likely to generate a positive ROI. And Media Relations Agency shows that companies that blog generate 67% more leads than their competitors. So when we take blogging and we build it into our marketing process as a consistent marketing strategy, we can increase our leads, we can increase our sales opportunities, and basically we can just get more at bats with our prospects. So there are some really, really significant bottom line opportunities when we take blogging seriously and we do it effectively. So what does this actually look like when it's done effectively? What kind of opportunities can we create for ourselves? One example I love to point to comes from Content Inc. This is a book written by Joe Paluzzi, and this is sort of the Bible of content marketing. Joe Paluzzi is sort of a trailblazer in content marketing and this idea of creating content for marketing purposes. And one of the things he looks at very early on in Content Inc. is this case study about a pool installer. So somebody who goes around um, digging up holes and installing pools in people's backyards. And during the Great Recession of the early 2000s, business dried up for this pool installer. Nobody was getting new pools and he wasn't getting any business and he was just devastated. And so what he started doing is at night when he would get home, he would just write blogs about everything he knew about pools. He would write about maintenance, about installation, about managing the chemicals in your pool, some of the how to take care of your filters, everything he could think of, he started putting down and writing these blogs. And what he found was over time, traffic just increasing and increased and increased and increased to his site. And eventually, what happened, even in the middle of this recession, his website became the go-to resource for researching and understanding pools, maintenance, installation, and it saved his business. Before the recession was even over, he had a new book of business. He was busy all the time, and it really helped save him in a really, really difficult time. The market's different, admittedly, now that we are 15 years removed from that case study. Online uh, digital marketing is much more competitive and it's much more difficult to rank content organically on search engines. However, with the right processes and the right content in place, we can still see really, really phenomenal results. So one of the case studies that we often point to is one of our clients who is a therapy practice, and they came to us. They were already had an established business. They already had an established website. They wanted to dabble in blogging as a new opportunity to drive more traffic to their website and get more at bats, get more inquiries. Well, we audited their website, we revised a bunch of content, and then we started blogging twice a month. And roughly, 6 to 7 months in, they were able to double the size of their team, and they had their first ever wait list for new patients. So we're looking at about half a year skyrocketed a lot of what they were able to do. There are also some intangibles that you might experience that might not improve your bottom line right away, but might help expand your reach. So I used to run a music blog that I started called Monster Riff, and it ended up opening up some really interesting opportunities. I got to meet some of my favorite rock stars. I got to cover some really cool music as well. But I wrote an article about a show I went to in McKees Rocks, and there was a band there called Uncle Acid and another one called King Buffalo. And this blog covering that show eventually got me in contact with Consequence, which is a pretty big music and entertainment publication. And they had me cover Roger Waters from Pink Floyd when he came to Pittsburgh a few years ago. So you have one thing that doesn't seem like a big deal, and you publish that and it gets noticed, and you can open up new professional opportunities. And we see this a lot with professionals who are building their own personal brand as they get deeper into the space, as they start writing more and more content, they find new opportunities and new doors open for them. So let's step back a little bit and let's talk about where blog ideas come from. Where do we come up with new ideas, and how do we continue to come up with new blog ideas on a consistent basis? Because once we're in the thick of it, it's easy to become laser focused, put our blinders on, and we're just down in the middle of our work, right? But we really have to think about, what does our target audience care about? What do they want to read? So I've listed out 7 strategies that I think are incredibly helpful. There are many others, many others that you can use on a regular basis. There's a great tool called Google Keyword Planner. And what Google Keyword Planner is, this is a tool built inside the ads platform. And what it does is, if you go in there, you can type in any phrase that you want to type in, and what it'll spit out is a number of related phrases that and also give you the search volume and difficulty level around that phrase as well. So search volume is basically how many people are searching for a given phrase in a given month. And the difficulty level is how much competition there is around that phrase. So in other words, how hard will it be for you to rank really well for that phrase? So this is a great resource for getting new ideas for new blog topics. Your reviews, your public facing reviews that you have on Google, on Yelp, and other places, these are great places to come up with new ideas, because your reviews are where people are going to help explain where you stand out and what differentiates you from the competition. So if somebody is constantly complimenting your unique perspective to your discipline, or maybe your customer service, there are different things that you can focus in on and take inspiration from. So if somebody is focusing on your process and how easy your process is to follow and how effective it is, maybe you write a blog about your process and you give people a little bit of a look behind the curtain to show how effective you are and continue building that trust. Think about your recent client meetings. What did you talk about during those meetings? What common thread do you talk about over and over again with your clients? If there's a topic that keeps coming up over and over again, or if there is something very seasonal or newsy that comes up, that might be something worth discussing on your blog. Map out your buyer's journey. So think about where people are struggling in their life and the steps they take to get to you. So for at Poetica, for example, we're often helping people with their marketing or with live event coordination, which means they have some sort of business problem. They are trying to grow their business, they're trying to launch their business, they're trying to build awareness about their business. And those 3 topics alone are blog opportunities for me. But I can also drill down further into each of those topics and expand on those to write new blogs. Industry news are a great place to come up with new ideas. You see this a lot with like financial advisors and people who are watching the market every single day. There's constantly news out about the market and how things are evolving. I know a lot of financial advisors who watch and read that every single day, but there's always news to talk about. And so anything that changes within your industry, if you want to write about that and be another news source, you can, but you can also be a place for reflection and perspective and give your spin on new developments within your industry. You can also consider your own unique processes and qualities. What are those things that separate you from the competition and are key differentiators from what everyone else is doing in the market? What makes you unique? And then, of course, you can also just go to ChatGPT or AI and just say, give me blog topics on for my business. This is what my business is. This is what I do. This is what makes me unique. Give me 10 blog topics and it'll spit them out very, very quickly. And then you can ask them to refine them. So probably it might give you 10 ideas. 9 of them are good. And then you can just have them drill down over and over again until you have topics that you absolutely love and you feel like you could really manage. So with that out of the way, let's talk about copywriting. How do we become copywriters? My goal today is not to have you guys turn around and go write your first blog and have it be a knockout. But I do want to give you some easy to follow rules and recommendations that can make you a little bit more competent, a little bit more comfortable as you're writing. So number one, pretty simple, write directly to your audience. We want to make sure that we're talking to the people that we want to do business with on our website. I used to do this well, I've always done this, but one of the ways I did this when I was in journalism, I wrote for a very specific audience. I wrote for accounts payable managers. And what I did was I hung up 2 pictures in my cubicle, and they were just the LinkedIn profile pictures of 2 of my subscribers that I was friendly with. And I just had them in there. And whenever I was unsure how to explain a weird IRS regulation or a new federal update, I would just look at their picture and I would say, how would I say this to Sharon if she was sitting down at the bar with me? And I would work out verbally how I would communicate that to them, and then I would write that down. And so this is a really, really great way for us to talk in a way that is receptive to our audience and also true to our own voices too. Another phrase I love, and if you remember nothing else from today, just remember this phrase. This is my favorite writing tip in the world. Omit needless words. There's a fantastic, fantastic book called The Elements of Style. It is by E.B. White, so the guy who wrote Charlotte's Web, Babe, all of those other classics, and William Strunk. This is a very, very easy guide to read on writing. And in fact, a lot of other writing guides are just built off of the foundation that they established in the Elements of Style. But basically, he's saying omit needless words. The fewer words you can use to make a point, the more effective your language will be. And the other thing that's great about the Elements of Style is when they make a recommendation, they'll show you a side-by-side comparison of here's how something sounds when it was first written, and here's what it looks like when we apply the rule. So here's a quick before and after. The before is whenever you write exactly what you mean, you have a better chance of sounding like you know what you're talking about and influencing others. If we strip this down to the core of the message, we get short, direct sentences are powerful. So that A-B comparison there is stark. These are 2 very different styles, but we can see that the after here is so much more precise. It's so much easier to understand, and we've stripped away so much of the language. And so as we're writing, think about those opportunities to be more precise, to be more accurate, to be briefer. We all hear, brevity is the essence of wit. It's also the essence of great writing. So work to omit those needless words as you're creating content. In a slightly similar way, another great writing tip is from Samuel Taylor Coleridge, and he was a writer in the 1800s. So this tip is 200 years old, but he wrote, "Prose is words in the best order, and poetry is the best words in the best order." I'm not asking you to go out and write poetry, but I do want you to think about your word economy. When we use stronger verbs, when we use stronger nouns, when we really work on precision, we become so much more articulate and our message becomes so much clearer. And when we are better communicators, people trust us more. And so when we think about that in terms of blogging and sales and marketing, so much our efforts are so much more fruitful just because we've communicated better. We've all probably heard show, don't tell in high school and college courses. But when we show instead of tell, we're really helping to create a picture, a really, really vivid image for our readers, and images are so much easier to remember than information. So we might start off with language like our new cooler insulation keeps things cold. Okay, great. Your cooler works. But if we write something like our unique insulation technology keeps drinks icy, toasted sandwiches crunchy, and hot summer days refreshing, there's some really vivid imagery here that I'm going to remember. And it's going to make me say, okay, maybe this cooler is really great. Maybe I should consider this. On a similar end, we want to focus on benefits instead of features. So a feature is just a boring line item that a product or service offers. The benefit is how that changes the individual's life. So we might start off with something like our cooler has a unique insulation that keeps item 15 degrees colder than competing products. Okay, great. That's a wonderful feature. What does that do for me? Our proprietary technology lets you spend an entire day at the beach with every drink as cold as the first one. The benefit language here is much more impactful because I can see how that feature benefits my life. So as we're working on new copy, think about focusing on benefits instead of features. Another tip is to include a call to action. So whenever we're writing a blog, there's a purpose behind it. And think about what you want somebody to do by the time they get to the end of the blog, or even in the middle of the blog. Do you want them to contact you? Do you want them to read another blog? Do you want them to download an infographic or some piece of gated content that you have? Maybe you have an ebook that you want people to download. Think about that as you're writing and make sure you include those calls to action throughout your copy to pull people further down your sales funnel and really take advantage of those sales opportunities. Now, with that out of the way, let's talk about the anatomy of a blog. Now that we know the benefits and we know how we can go about writing better, let's look about what we're actually writing and how a good blog is actually formatted. There are 100 different formulas that you can follow. There's really no wrong way to go about it. But here is a rough outline of a structure that you can use. We start off with an introduction, something to hook the reader, keep them reading, get them prepared for what they're going to be reading about. If it's a long, multi-sectional blog, something that's very informational, we might include a table of contents that has anchor links down to those other sections so people can just click on the section that they want to read and it pushes them down. We're going to have headers, so it's going to be like little chapters, chapter headings or chapter titles that'll help separate the content. We'll have paragraphs, of course. We'll have additional headers and additional paragraphs. And then we'll have some sort of conclusion and call to action. And then another great thing to include is about the author. And sometimes we'll just have like a byline with our picture and our name. And a lot of times what blogs will do is if you click on that byline, it'll bring up the author profile. But don't be afraid of including a little section about yourself so that people can connect with you a little bit better. So let's look at these more closely. In our title, we really want a keyword-rich title. During our SEO seminar last week, we talked a lot about keyword research. At the beginning, or towards the beginning of this presentation, we talked about that Google Keyword Planner. If we're writing with SEO in mind, we really want to have keywords at our forefront. If we're going to be ignoring SEO, and that's not really our purpose, if we want to more focus on thought leadership and just building relationships, this isn't that important. But if we're looking at things from an SEO perspective, we really want to make sure we have a keyword-rich title, which means we really want to start off our efforts with keyword research. So if you want to learn more about that, check out the SEO webinar or shoot me a message and we can talk more about that. We can also talk about that more at the end of this session. We also want to make sure we write a keyword-rich meta description. And I pulled out a bunch of the HTML for the blog we were just looking at, just to emphasize that search engines crawl the website with they call spiders, and these spiders crawl through the internet trying to index information. And this is what they look at. They look at the back end of a website, and it's going to be looking for the line that says description, which is right here. and it's going to be looking for this meta description to help understand what the blog post is actually about. And so meta descriptions are a great opportunity to explain to a search engine exactly what the blog is. And it's also a great place for us to use those keywords that we've researched to help us rank in the future. Of course, we want to use our introduction to grab attention as quickly as possible. So come up with some sort of hook to keep people reading. When I was in journalism, I had an editor. Ooh, Deborah, yes, you have a question.
Hi, I just wanted to ask you something
Yeah.
about keyword-rich meta description, and you
Yeah.
showed
Yeah.
something screen with all this code, and like,
Yeah.
what do I have to? I mean, this is really confusing to me. Do I have to
Sure, sure.
do anything? Are you saying that if I use keyword-rich titles and use good SEO within my blog post, this will all just show up, or is there something I have to do to make this show up?
No,
Like,
great question. So you can actually bring this up on any website. So if you go to your own website or NewYorkTimes.com and you right click, it'll bring up an option. I think you can also hit Control U, and it'll bring up the code that actually is building the website and telling the browser what to display. So you don't have to write your website like this or your blog like this. This is a little bit more advanced. But I'm doing here, what I was wanting to emphasize here is the importance of a meta description to a robot as it's crawling through your website. Deborah, do you have your own website?
I do, and Misha designed it.
Okay, is it built in WordPress?
Yes.
Okay. When you're blogging in WordPress, usually when you go in, you hit new post and you
Mhm.
scroll all the way to the bottom, usually there's a field there that'll just say meta description. And then you can write in your meta description however you want it to appear. Typically, best practice is 145 to 160 characters. And you want to keep it somewhere within that length. And the reason we want to aim for that length is because years ago, search engines were a little simpler and not quite as smart. So when you search for something like bagels, this is the first word that came to my mind, what would come up are a number of websites about bagels, and there would be a little description underneath each website. And that description used to be the meta description. And so what we were telling search engines at the time was when you show this page or my website in a search result, this is the language that I want you to include. What happened then is search engines became more sophisticated and they became better and better and better at picking out the exact line somebody was looking for during their search and then pulling that into the description instead. So what the meta description has become is sort of like a last-ditch effort to inform a robot what a web page is about. It's probably not going to appear very often in search results, but it's still a really great tool for informing search engines and users what a page is about. Most people aren't going to end up reading your meta description because it sits on the back end of your web page and it's not very visible in any case, but it is visible to robots, which is why I use this graphic just to show it's going to show up as gobbledygook and spaghetti code on the back end. Does that make more sense, Deb?
Yes, and just one more question.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I did see that at the bottom of a new post that there's a little block for meta description. I just ignored it. And you said I can write that, but I can write it in words, not in code.
Oh yeah, yeah. You don't have to use any sort of code.
Okay.
So what's great about WordPress is um, when you do all of like your formatting or you put in any sort of text in there, all of that coding is happening on the back end. So you shouldn't have to do any coding in most cases. So yeah, when you type in your meta description, it'll automatically wrap all of that HTML code around it for you. So you won't have to worry about anything.
And it's not necessarily going to be visible to readers.
Correct. Yep.
Ok- Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Great question. All right, so like I said, we want to use an introduction that has a hook that gets them reading. When I was in journalism, I had an editor who told me the purpose of our headline was to get the reader to read our very first sentence. And the purpose of the very first sentence was to get them to read the rest of the article. So basically, if we had a killer headline and we had a killer intro, we were going to get them to read the whole story. And if we got them to read the whole story, they were going to buy the publication. So really focus on your titles, really focus on your lead or your introduction, and that'll help you get people who read the entire article. Your headers are great places to insert keywords. They're also great ways to break up the text. We don't want big giant scrolls of text in our blogs because this becomes overwhelming. You also have to consider that most of the internet is experienced on mobile devices now. And when you pull up a great big paragraph on your phone, it's overwhelming. People don't want to read long paragraphs. So we want to make sure that we're using headers, we're using short paragraphs, and that our content is easy to visually scan so we can find the sections that are most relevant to us. And with that in mind, keep your paragraph short. I typically try to keep my paragraphs to 3 to 4 lines. And if I get longer than that, I just break it up at the next sentence. When we're in school, we learn a paragraph is a collection of related sentences, right? When writing for the internet, though, again, we don't want to be overwhelming. We want our writing to be really slick. We want it to be easy to digest. And so it's totally okay. And it's actually kind of commonplace to just use one sentence paragraphs. That's become pretty much the norm. We also want to pay attention to our internal links. So whenever possible, we want to link to other blogs, other services, anything that we think is going to be relevant to our readers while they're reading. The advantage of this is that we're also getting them to experience other parts of our website and other thought leadership that we've had. And in general, the more time somebody spends on your website, the more likely they are to make a purchase, to call you, to send you an email, to ask about your services. So the more time somebody spends on your website, the more likely they are to become a customer because they spent all of that time learning about your brand, learning about your expertise, and starting to trust you. Similarly, we want to think about external links as well. So if we are citing a some new research that's coming out or a regulation that we want our readers to know about or anything authoritative, we really should link to those sources. We want to show that the information that we're talking about isn't made up and is from a credible source. And that's going to make our copy and our work a bit more legit because it's backed up by facts and we can prove that those facts are real through the links to authoritative sources. Another great tool is to use videos and graphics as much as possible. So the great thing about embedding videos and infographics and original artwork into our posts is that it holds attention longer. The more time somebody spent, again, it goes back to our rule, the more time somebody spends on your website, the more likely they are to trust you, the more they're likely to engage with other content as well. What we also recently found in another, or in the Google leak, if you didn't hear about that, there was recently a big leak. And when it comes to Google SEO practices and what it's actually looking for, and one of the things that they're paying attention to is time on page. So if somebody spends more time on a page, that page is more likely to rank in search results. So if we include a bunch of videos in a blog post, people are probably going to spend time watching those videos, which means they're going to spend time reading, but they're also going to spend time watching. So these are great ways to help people engage with our content and really just give them a multimedia experience, which can be really, really impactful. You'll probably have people who don't like reading, and if we give them a video to watch instead, they can still get the same information. They just get it in a way that's more easily digestible for them. A few quick tips. Tip number one, remember people scan before they read. When somebody opens a blog, they typically don't read from top to bottom. What they'll try to do is scan through it and just kind of see, what is this blog about? Does it have the information that I need? They might just jump directly to the paragraph that seems relevant to them. And then based off of what they find there, they might go through and read the whole thing. So make sure that you're using headers, graphics, videos, tables, anything that makes the content visually easier on the eyes. Use videos and infographics to hold attention. Use short paragraphs to avoid overwhelming the reader. Use your anchor links to move from the table of contents down to other headers. We can talk about that more at the end if anybody wants an in-depth look at that. And then finally, another great tool from Google is called Search Console. We talked about this during our SEO webinar as well. But Search Console is a tool that helps you figure out how your website is ranking on Google. And you can actually submit new URLs directly to Google to say, hey, this is ready for you to review. Please crawl it and index it so it can show up in search results. And so this is a great way for you to be able to see whether or not your content is ranking. And if it's not ranking, oftentimes Google will say, hey, we're not indexing this because of XYZ. You need to fix these problems, and then we'll go ahead and rank it. So this is a really, really powerful tool for you to use. It's completely free and relatively easy to set up as well. Okay, so now that we know how to write a blog, let's talk about promotion. How do we make sure people know that we've written something and that they should come and read it? Social media is an easy thing to do. We can create a new graphic, we can just share the link. Basically, we can get it out to our followers and say, hey, we have this great piece of content for you to read, come check it out. So that's an easy first step. We can also use the emails that we've collected, so our email list, to send it out to past customers, to prospects, to people in our sales funnel, to our partners, any subscribers that we have. These are a great way to demonstrate our thought leadership and our knowledge base and pull people back to the website to help them become customers or to really deepen the relationships that we already have with them. Industry forums are another great place to do this too. So if you're active in any relevant Facebook groups or subreddits, if anybody out there is a Redditor, or any other forums, these are really great places to share your thought leadership as well. LinkedIn groups could be another option there. And these can be great to share your ideas with other people in the space, with people who are looking for support, and also just to get some feedback and really start some conversations with people who are really interested in the same topics. And then finally, another thing we should always do, and this is often overlooked, this is a step I even see agencies forget to do as well. If our new piece of content is related to old pieces of content that we've written, we should consider going into our older blogs and creating a link in there to our new piece of content. So if I write an article about bicycles and I wrote an article about bicycles 6 months ago, I should go into that post from 6 months ago and I should create a new link to my new article. So if anybody finds my old one, they can also find the new one too and read about more content about bicycles. So it's an easy way to squeeze a little extra juice out of old content that we've written. With all of that in mind, what are some blog writing technologies that we can use? One that I use all the time is Grammarly. This is a really great plugin to help with capturing writing errors, grammar errors, spelling errors. They have a free version. I think I paid for the paid version. It's not that much, and I do a lot of writing, so it's nice to have a little editor over my shoulder. There is a cool website called the Hemingway Editor, and you can write directly into their word processor. You can copy and paste copy in as well, but it'll show you some opportunities to tighten up your language. It'll help you refine your voice and your tone a little bit. It's a really nice way to get a second opinion on your writing. And wordcounter.net is a great tool for cutting down on your word count. Earlier, we talked about omitting needless words and being as precise as possible. And this is a great tool that you can see how many words you've written in real time, and it can help you say, okay, I'm at 15 words. I really feel like I could express this idea in 6 words. Let me see if I can chop this down. So this is a really great safe space just for you to practice and really work on being efficient in your writing. If you're really into SEO and you want more help with like meta descriptions and things like that, Deborah, there's a Yoast SEO plugin for WordPress, which is really, really beneficial. It simplifies a lot of things inside WordPress. It'll also give you a nice little box to type in your meta descriptions. It'll help you out with your headers and a few other things too. Keywords Everywhere is another browser plugin. It just gives you more data. So if you go into Google and you search for a phrase, Keywords Everywhere will pop up on the side and give you data on related keyword phrases. So if you're doing some research, Keywords Everywhere might give you some extra blog topic ideas. And then I have Mangles, SEMrush, and Moz. These are all paid tools that are like Google Keyword Planner, but beefier and a little bit more precise. So, like I said, Google Keyword Planner is a great place to get data on keywords and search volume for specific keywords. Mangle, SEMrush, and Moz will do all of that too. They're going to be a little bit more precise. And they also have some other cool built-in tools too. So they'll tell you like, this is where your website is a little slow. This is why you're having trouble ranking this page. Excuse me. So it'll just go into more detail than Google Keyword Planner will. And then finally, if you like AI, you could use ChatGPT, which I'm sure all of you have heard about. Outranking is another real big SEO AI tool. There's also one called Jasper, which is for content creators. So it'll help you with social media, blogs, things like that. Excuse me, one moment. Excuse me. So with that in mind, let's talk about if you do decide to use generative AI in your blog writing process, what should you be aware of to get the most value out of it as possible? So before we talk about that though, I want to share a quick story. There was a pretty big news article about a year ago. A individual was injured on an airplane. It was ended up being a personal injury case. It should have been pretty cut and dried. She should have won immediately. But her attorney used ChatGPT to build the case for him. So basically used ChatGPT as a paralegal. And he said, get me some case history here, find out if there's any sort of precedent, cite the original cases, just do the work for me. It did, and he handed it in. And what they eventually found out was that ChatGPT cited a bunch of case history that didn't exist. It made a bunch of stuff up, and he submitted that. And not only did the case get thrown out that his client should have easily won, he also got fined like $10,000. So he got in a lot of legal trouble for taking that shortcut. I've noticed similar things just trying to use ChatGPT for research. Even this morning, I was writing something from a more like scientific perspective, and I just needed some data on something. So I asked it to pull some research for me, and it just made some stuff up. It gave me some figures, and I said, "Great, what's the source for that?" And it basically said, "Oh no, there's no source for that. I was just trying to give you an example." We have to be really, really careful with any sort of AI generated content, especially when we're citing anything that's supposed to be factual, because there's a chance that it could be wrong, and it's wrong more often than you might realize. So some pros of using ChatGPT and other AI, it's a great starting point. Yes, sometimes it's wrong, but it's a good starting point for collecting information, building up a perspective, and basically building the framework for future content. So it can provide a really, really nice starting point for us to build on top of. It's really great to say, hey, I'm going to be writing a blog about this topic. Give me an outline for it that I might be able to work from. And then from that outline, you can flesh out individual paragraphs and start building your blog that way. It's really great for developing new ideas. You could say, hey, give me 10 blog topics on this discipline or this specialization. And then it's also really great for filling in content once you've established your own tone and style. So what you could do is like you could write 3/4 of a blog, and then you could say, hey, I want you to copy this same exact voice and tone, but write me a paragraph on this, this, and this, and just finish this up for me. And it'll spit it out. And it does a pretty good job matching voice and tone. So it can be like a little writing assistant. Of course, you have to go back and proofread it and check it for factual accuracy, but it can be really, really powerful. Some of the cons. Um, AI isn't great at executing strategy. So it's not going to be able to pull levers for you. It's not going to be able to execute for you. Um, it's not going to be as clever as some of the ideas that you might have. So if you're trying to be really original, it's really good at sourcing ideas from all over the internet. It might not be as good as coming up with really original creative ideas. So if you want something with a unique spin, you might have a little trouble pulling that off with AI. It's bad with certain SEO projects. If you ask it to do keyword research for you, there are a lot of things like that that it'll struggle with. So you have to be really, really careful and intentional with what you ask it for. It's not always great with thought leadership. So if you like to write original ideas, ChatGPT can't read your mind and it can't pull from your experiences. You can teach it and you can tell it what you've seen and you can ask it to take those experiences and condense them into a message, but it's not going to be a perfect one-to-one replacement for your own original ideas. And with that in mind, um, it's only as good as your input. So output is only equal to inputs. So if you're not a really skilled writer and author and you haven't really developed a voice yet, ChatGPT is probably going to have a little bit of trouble kind of capturing the tone and voice that you want to establish unless you tell it ahead of time, this is the perspective that I'm trying to take. This is the voice that I want to follow. Please write about X, Y, and Z. So basically, the more information we put into it, the more we can get out of it. So last thing we'll talk about today is proving the value of your blog. So typically what we want to look at is when we blog, how many people read the blog, how much time did they spend there, and what actions did they take? GA4, the replacement for Google Analytics, is a free tool, and it gives us really, really deep insights into how users behave on our website. So we'll be able to see how many people opened up a blog post, how long they spent on that page, which is generally an indication of whether or not they read it. In addition, we'll also be able to see what else they clicked on. So did they go read another blog from there? And more importantly, did they make a phone call or complete a form after reading it? So this will really help us determine how valuable our blog posts are. And if we're selling anything online, we can also demonstrate how many sales we got based off of one blog post. So this is a really, really, really powerful tool for helping us gauge blog success. And Search Console is another free, powerful tool as well. Search Console shows us how blogs perform on Google itself. So we'll be able to see which blogs ranked best in search results and how much traffic they generated to our website just by those blogs existing. So between GA4 and Search Console, these are two very, very affordable, because they're free, tools to prove blog success. So I know we've covered a lot of ground here. Some of it got a little bit technical. Any questions, anything anybody wants me to repeat or cover or talk about?
Hi, Patrick.
Hey,
I just had a comment about the last things you were talking about. I use constant contact. Like if I write a new blog post and I
Yeah.
send it, and it shows all those statistics, who opened it, how many
Yeah.
click did they click through, and I mean, there's probably more than what were you talking about that showed all that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
so I
yeah.
think that constant contact is very good with showing me all those things too. There's,
Yeah.
yeah. So how do you think that measures up to, um,
So Constant Contact is a wonderful email tool, right? So when we email our new content out, Constant Contact is giving us an idea of how individual subscribers are engaging with our content. So that report is really, really great for that one specific instance.
hmm,
What's great about GA4 specifically is that it'll tell us how people are behaving on our site once they're there. So if you started off in Constant Contact and you emailed out a new article and somebody clicked to that article, that's really where the tracking ends in most cases. GA4 would then pick it up from there. So it would show a visit to that blog article, but it can also track where else people went after visiting that blog article. So it might show that it went to your service page or your products page, or maybe to another blog article. So it's just going to give you a different type of information. And similar deal with Search Console. If somebody clicked on your Constant Contact link, nothing's going to register in Search Console, because Search Console is only going to look at clicks and impressions you got on Google as a search platform. But Constant Contact isn't going to be able to give you the same data Search Console is. So these are just different sources of data and information, and they all have their own, purpose and value.
thank you for clarifying that. I
Yeah, it
appreciate
was a
it.
great question. Sarah, I saw you unmute, and then Nicole, if you have a question, you can go after Sarah then.
Hi, Patrick. I keep putting on mute because my dog keeps barking in the
Oh,
background. So
don't worry.
apologies.
No
But
worries.
yeah, so I guess my question would be, I get concerned sometimes that if we put too much information on a blog, and I don't have a blog, but I'm just thinking about starting one, that it would give away all of our trade secrets, and then how would people want to contact us for business? So how would you respond to that?
Yeah. So I would challenge you to think about how secret your trade secrets are. There's a pretty good chance that your competitors are giving away a lot of free information. And we see this even in the marketing world too. A lot of blogs and marketing agencies are just explaining how to do stuff. And the truth is that, if I help one person with a blog, great. Maybe they learn how to write a blog on their own. 99% of the people, though, they don't want to do that lift. They don't want to go through the trouble. They don't have the bandwidth. They don't want to learn something new. So they're probably going to hire me for it. And I think you're probably going to find the same as a senior consultant, right? Yes, you might explain how the process looks and what you actually have to go through, but 99% of your readers aren't able to do that, and they probably need a little bit of help. So, like earlier this week, I was writing something for a senior law attorney or elder law attorney. And although we were walking through and explaining some of these Medicaid regulations, that doesn't qualify a reader to necessarily make Medicaid decisions, but it's educating them enough that they can say, okay, this is maybe what I should do in this instance, and maybe I should contact an attorney. And then while they're on that website, it's just another click to make that contact. So it's another way of just building trust and converting them into a customer or a prospect from there. Does that explain, or does that answer your question, Sarah?
It does, absolutely. Thanks. And it's great that you put it in a real context. So thank you. And I would love to meet that attorney. If you could pass him on as a referral, that'd be great.
Sure, happy to do that.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Good
Uh,
information today, by the way.
yeah. Thank you, Sarah. Nicole, did you have a question?
Yes. So my question was more about a lot of times when I'm trying to like think of what to do, especially for blogs, which I'm like not as well versed in, I'll look at like what other people are doing and kind of just like see what's commonly done. Are there any things that you're like, you see a lot of people do them in blogs, or you see a lot of even like higher up people using for their blog posts, and you just don't think it really helps at all, or it's kind of like a no, no, like in your eyes, like it's a don't really do this, even though everyone else is?
Yeah. Yeah. The most egregious thing that I see, and I've seen it more and more often over the last 12 months, is people who are blatantly just getting content out of like ChatGPT and just pasting it onto their website. So this is a really big issue for a number of reasons. We talked about output is only as good as input. And I've spent a lot of time trying to teach ChatGPT how to write like me and how to be efficient. And you really have to be really, really intentional about educating it how to write something and what voice to use and who the target audience is. And it's just, there's some real big limitations there. So if you're unfamiliar with blogging best practices, what you might say is, write me a blog about, so in your case, write me a blog about how to design a logo, right? Since you're in graphic design. And it'll write a blog on how to design a logo, but it might be really long paragraphs. It might not include any section headers. It's not going to include any internal links. It's not going to include any external links. It's not going to include any infographics or any videos or any of the other things that we talked about today. It's not even going to write you a meta description because that's not what you asked for. It's also not going to write you something with keywords in mind. It's not going to write you anything with necessarily a great hook, and it doesn't know anything about your target audience. So what it's going to spit out is going to be absolutely vanilla. And so the most painful thing I see is when websites just copy that result and they just paste it into their blog and then they hit publish. Because there are so many elements that that blog post is missing that one, it's not going to do anything beneficial for their company. And two, because they missed so much of the legwork, it's probably not going to be super beneficial to their readers either, if they even get somebody to that blog. So I think that the short answer is I see a lot of companies using AI and not really using it well. And I think this is going to hurt them in the long run. Does that answer your question, Nicole?
Yeah, it definitely does. I know exactly. I mean, I see that so much
You can
with
tell.
like the AI content and the lack of authenticity about it. You can just like pick it up right away, I feel like. So that's really good.
Oh, yeah. Anything else? Any other questions? Okay, perfect. Oh, Deborah, did you have one more?
Well, it's just a comment,
Sure.
there's just so much to think about, the
Mhm.
chat GPT, and my issues aren't so much about having ideas or writing it. It's like checking on the SEO and just like so many other things to check and do. It's just overwhelms me sometimes, and then I do nothing.
Yeah.
So I just
Yes.
I just gotta make a plan and work it. And I never do any of these things. I never do a keyword search. I
Mm,
have GA4. I've never used it. I mean, there's just so much to do because I have a practice that I need to
yeah.
work at too. So anyhow, it's just a comment, and I've took good notes. I really appreciate your webinar
Oh,
here
thank
today
you.
and the SEO one. I was on that one, and I may be contacting you. So thanks so
Okay.
much, Pat.
Yeah, absolutely. When we were talking about tools, um, so if you want a really, really shallow dive into some SEO tools, I would recommend starting with Mangles. I think it used to be like 30 or $50 a month, which seems like a lot, until you consider that like SEMrush or Moz are going to be like hundreds of dollars a month. And Misha said this like on our webinar last week. That makes sense for an agency like Poetica or Redtree, right? Because we're going to get at least $100 worth of value out of those. Mangles is less expensive, also is less powerful. I think it's super user friendly. I used to use this when Poetica was starting off and we didn't have budget for anything. So it's a really, really nice entry level SEO tool. And I think it's really user friendly from a research perspective. So it could be really nice for you to start there and just kind of get your feet wet a little bit. Google Keyword Planner is another thing that you could try. It would be free. Um, Google isn't really known for building user-friendly products. And every time I go in Keyword Planner, I'm like, why did I even open this? I hate being in here. And it's just not super user-friendly. So if you wanted something that maybe help you stretch your wings a little bit, Mangles might be a good alternative for you.
Thank
Oh,
you.
yeah, and there's one other tool that you could check out, and you could just kind of check to see how comfortable you are. It's called Uber Suggest, Ubersuggest. It's by a gentleman named Neil Patel. He's like an SEO coach guru, and he built Uber Suggest. And if you just find the Uber Suggest website, you get like 3 uses per month for free. So that'll give you sort of a free experience of what it would be like to be in one of these tools and kind of get some of the same information.
Thanks. I'll check that out. And I'm really sorry, I have another appointment, so I'm going to have to log out now. But
Totally fine. Totally
again,
fine.
I'll probably be on your next one. I
Okay.
appreciate, Patrick. Your information is very helpful and very valuable.
Thank you, Deborah. You have a nice day.
You too. Bye.
See you later. Esther and Nicole, do you guys have any other questions?
No, I don't have any. I actually also have to jump. So
Okay, no
I
problem.
really appreciate this. Thank you so much, Pat.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Well, then,
Thank you.
I make a question then still for the last. I wonder how much time usually it takes for a beginner, let's say, or not a writer, to create a blog that is useful. So just to put it in perspective, like if I'm overdoing this or if it's normal, the time I spend with it.
Yeah, so it's a multi-layered question, right? So if we're thinking about this from an SEO perspective, so if we're writing content that we really want to rank, and we're in a competitive industry, there are certain boxes we need to check. So that box needs to be really well researched. We probably want to have some sort of multimedia experience in there. Length becomes a factor too. So over time, competitive articles just get longer and longer. So where it used to be like the first article in Google might have been 1,200 words, now it might be 2,400 words. So there's a difference in length and research and time it just spent writing, and that's true for every article that we're trying to cover. So if we're trying to be hyper competitive in a hyper competitive space, maybe 4 to 8 hours per blog. I think I typically budget about 4 hours per article. And that's like a pretty standard length, maybe up to like 1,500 words. But if we have to get longer, it could be much, much longer. I think the biggest article I wrote for a client was when I was at a previous agency. We were working with an architecture firm, and they were doing really in-depth articles about the history of the buildings that they were working on. And so what we would do is we would interview the architect who worked on the project and the project manager, and then we would talk to the building manager and maybe even sometimes like the real estate agent who worked on the project. And we would just get all of this information about the building and about the revitalization process and the neighborhood. And then we would go through the writing process. And I mean, by the end of it, we probably put 20 to 25 hours just into researching and writing and revising these blogs. So they were really, really intense pieces, but they were also really, really different. So I think it really depends on process, comfortability with writing, and so many other things.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
It seems fine. So when I think about writing something within an hour, that's pretty much short.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's pretty quick. Yeah.
Very optimistic, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And you mentioned that twice a month is recommended to make a blog post, or is there something like you have a base of 30 blogs and then you are fine once a month, or like, is there a base amount?
Again,
Like,
we go back to our goals here, right? So if we're trying to be competitive from an SEO perspective, which is often how I think about things, two would really be like the minimum. I often recommend four per month. Again, though, it really goes back to what is our goal? What is our budget? What's our appetite? What's our audience's appetite for reading that much content? And what are we trying to rank for? What are our competitors doing? If we're just trying to be thought leaders, I've seen people do well with just like one really thoughtful article per month, and they have a really good process for promoting that. They have a good audience in their email, they have a good audience on social media, and they've built up a network of people who really look forward to that like monthly article. And those are great instances. But for businesses, especially new businesses that are trying to build up a lot of content at once, it can be really useful to have a lot of content right out of the gate, just to help them rank as quickly as possible and to build that trust with a library of content as quickly as possible.
okay, thank you very much. It was
Yeah,
super useful, this webinar for me.
great. I'm so happy to hear that. Thank you so much for joining.